Well, welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast. Coming at you live Friday night. I am joined by Price. Price, good evening. It's good to see you.
Yeah, I figured I'd hop on here. I've just been itching to talk more draft with people. My Kansas City Royals are making it evident that they are not going to make tonight a game. So at that point, I was like, all right, well, let's do something better with our time because that's getting really sad really fast. So here we are. It's the best time of year, right? Like it's just getting closer and closer. We're starting to get some rumors, starting to get some murmurs of teams that are looking to get out, looking to trade up. It's go time.
Yeah. So I think when you and I were plotting this out, we were going to talk a little bit about some my guys, and then we can also probably maybe talk a few trades or scenarios and things like that. But who are some of the my guys that you'd want to bring attention to this draft cycle?
Well, I will say, I don't mean to toot my horn, but we've had some pretty successful graduates of the Price's Picks, my guys. Most notably, my champion Puka Nacua. But I've also had some other guys. Jaden Reed was a big guy that I was a huge fan of. Last year, Cam Ward, or not Cam Ward, sorry, Cam Hart. Sorry, Freudian slip there. Cam Hart, loved his length and size out of Notre Dame. Great fit with the Chargers. Like every good draft guy, we only talk about the hits. We never talk about the misses. I still believe in Dylan Johnson, the running back from Washington, even though he's like not on an NFL roster right now. Never wrong, just early, right? But so this year for my Price's Picks, it'll go up on Arrowhead Addict this week. A lot of my guys are centered towards the Chiefs because that's a lot of the content I make, and that's one thing I've got to get better about as a draft guy is like taking off my red and gold glasses occasionally and like, hey, even though like James Pierce isn't a guy that the Chiefs would be really interested in, let's take a look at him or Donovan Ezraku or someone like that. But my guy, he's someone that I have loved from the beginning, especially his 2023 tape, and that's Nick Scorton. I think the thing that I love about Nick Scorton so much is I think the floor for him is so high. Love his ability to have his eyes in the backfield, read the ball carrier, and get to a brown ball. He's really good at that. I loved him standing up. I love him with his hand in the dirt. I think he's powerful. And one thing that I always come back to with these edge rushers is like you can have a lot of traits. You can have great pass rush moves. You can have speed. You can have bend. But ain't nobody winning in the NFL without power. You got to have power. And that's what I love about Scorton. He brings a ton of power to his game, high level motor. I also just, of course, going back to the Chiefs, like I see some shades of George Karlaftis in his game with that high motor that never stops. Really love the player. Was really excited about him moving to the SEC and Texas A&M, and then the Aggies, they did what they did and played contain a lot, and that kind of hurt his profile. But hey, I think Purdue wise, like coming out of 2023, this guy a top 10, top 15 pick. The only reason he's in spitting distance of the Chiefs or some of those other teams at the bottom of the round is because of some of the productivity down the line.
So I have a couple questions on that. So like think of a guy like Scourton, where okay, we've seen him at one school, transfers to another, and let's just say that Texas A&M, let's say the scheme didn't do him any draft favors. I'm being like gentle.
Yeah, yeah.
But then we also talk about, let's say, Ole Miss offensive players. We're like, okay, the Ole Miss offense doesn't do Trey Harris any favors.
For sure.
Do you see that tends to project better to defense than offense?
It's a good question. Honestly, it's hard. I think here's the thing. I think in any given defensive play, you can be asked to do many things that display traits that might translate to any NFL defense, right? The ball is snapped, and even if you're asked to play contain, you're using your hands, you're getting low with leverage, you're chasing the ball, you're tackling with form. I feel like defensively, there might be a little bit more ability to just kind of see what these guys are capable of. Like with Shamar Stewart, obviously that's a very hot button name right now with capability versus productivity. And I think that you're able to see more flashes of what it can be at the next level with some alterations to technique and stuff. And I also think there is a little bit more clear and deliberate, okay, this is what the plan is here. This is contain, this is zone, this is man. versus on offense, if I can't see it, like, yeah, like, we were using the example of Trey Harris. You see the size, you see the yak. Those are things that make him a second or a third round pick where he is right now. But the things that we push pause on are like the route running, right? Well, because half the time he takes a one-step hitch and waits for an RPO screen, we don't really get a good example of that, right? And it's tough to see. And there are certain things. Again, sticking with the Chiefs here, there's certain players that, like, hey, are the traits enough? Like when Rashee Rice came out of SMU, he compared himself to DeAndre Hopkins, a vertical X receiver, a contested ball winner, winning at the catch point. And the Chiefs are like, yeah, that's cool. Okay, go out in the slot and we'll throw you a mesh concept. And turns out like that's the best version of him. And they saw that first step explosiveness that he has when as soon as he gets the ball and flips his hip upfield, he's gone. So they were able to translate those traits. But when he was coming out of SMU, the lack of separation, some of the drops and those things that came in those contested catch situations, we hadn't seen it. Whereas I feel like you get a little bit better example of being able to see it. Every defense is going to run some zone. They're going to run some man. You're going to chase the passer at some point on 3rd and long. So in a long way about it, I think it's a little bit easier to overcome scheme on defense.
Yeah, and that was going to be my instinct on how your response would have been flavored. But I do think let's say from the Texas A&M defense, I have a higher opinion on them, I think, than consensus, to your point, because to me, a lot of it is traits, like you said. And you see traits in defensive players. Like I'm even just going back to the Bruce Smith draft, right? Where Bruce Smith, like if he were to have come out, let's say 30 years later, I don't know that everybody would have had him as an edge. They may have had him as like a defensive tackle because he was kind of big coming out of college.
Yeah, and I think one thing too to kind of remember too is like, and this is where admittedly I'll show some of my colors. I'm not like some of the guys in the chat who are already like on to 2026. As far as you know, there's not a lot of draftable guys on the back end of that defense right now. That Texas A&M pass rush basically drove the car for that defense, and it was a good defense. And obviously, this is like the first year under Mike Elko, so he's kind of molding that defense in his image. He did a lot of good things at Duke before, but you go back to like the A&M to the Ole Miss example. There's dogs all over that defense, right? There's going to be a lot of really draftable players. I was talking today that the Ole Miss Georgia game, that game in the rain, is like one of my top 3 most watched games this evaluation cycle, because they just keep coming back to the players in it and taking a look at them. So I do think, like, in one way, if we're coming to the defense of the A&M scheme, the coverage players, right? Like there's some good coverage players on the back end of A&M in the second level, where some of those coverage sacks might be a little bit more of a possibility versus Texas A&M. Like that pass rush kind of lived and died for the defense. And again, I'm not super caught up on the Texas A&M defense as far as 2026 goes.
Yeah, well, and like you said, there's a lot of guys that are in the Draft Professor chat that are already on to 2026, which this is almost like the dog days of draft season.
I almost understand it, right? Like I've kind of gotten to that point where like I almost, like, if you told me any player at pick 31, I'd be like, yeah, I don't love it, because it's just you come to know all these players' faults and you see through their weaknesses. And then I don't know, something else that like we always forget, right? We talk about these guys and we're sitting here over agonizing over a 6th round pick, and then training camp starts up in the heat of summer, and you're like, yeah, he'll be lucky if he makes the team. And it's like, well, we were agonizing over this in a mock draft. Do I take this guy with pick number 201? And then like, oh yeah, like he's got an uphill battle just to make the roster. But you know what? Like that's part of what makes the draft great, is like stressing over 6th round picks. And obviously those guys having a chance to hit is even more fun.
Yeah. And like, I'm a huge believer, like in rounds 4 and 5. I'm fascinated, like Brandon B, like for example, like obviously I'm a Bills fan, you're a Chiefs fan, right? And we had the trade with Xavier Worthy.
Uh-huh.
And one of the things that I loved is Brandon Beane in that trade took a 6th round pick and moved it all the way up into round 3.
Yeah. They've been pretty good. And like, I think just kind of talking bigger picture football here a little bit, one of the things about the Bills that I think like looking from a Chiefs perspective is like I think that they kind of had their Tyreek Hill-esque moment. And I know that's a comparison a lot of people have made, but like they've got to start hitting on those picks. And like that's the thing. Like the Tyreek Hill trade was great. Yeah, it cleared some salary cap space, but they basically got like out of the 2021 and 2022 draft, they got like 8 or 9 starters. And that's huge. Like most people tell you, if you get like 3 starters out of a draft, it's a home run draft. The draft before they get Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, and Nick Bolton, and then Trent McDuffie, Jalen Watson, Isaiah Pacheco, like just massive value for that. And all those guys have stuck on. Leo Chanel. So like being able to hit in those later days, I mean that really is a separation, right? A draft can be lost on day one. It absolutely can, right? Like you can have a great rest of the draft, but if your first round pick's a bust, that draft kind of feels like a lost cause. But you can absolutely win the draft on day 2 and especially day 3.
And I think you lose the draft on day 1 in the media. You may not lose your team, like Buffalo missed Kare Elam, but the rest of that draft feels like, I believe that's the James Cook, the Christian Benford, the Terrell Bernard draft.
Yeah, and like that's exactly it, right? Too is like, yeah, like people, you go back, you look at it, they can talk about Kyrie being a miss, but the team, they've been able to lock up a lot of those guys that they bring in, and those are kind of the next wave of guys. And I personally feel like any team that has a quarterback, that's the big thing. And Todd McShay was talking about this on his show today. Like, we'll just take the quarterback element and put it out there because obviously it's the most biggest factor. But if you have that piece in place, it frees you up so much to go and load up on defense because you've got a floor raiser on offense. And anytime you hit on that day 3 or day 2, it's just so much value. One, because the next step of having a quarterback is paying them what they deserve, which is going to be 19-20% of the salary cap or whatever the number is right now. And 2, like you get that cost control on those players too, and being able to turn that over. And again, right, like the Chiefs are already kind of on to that point now with that 22 class where it's like, hey, are you going to extend Leo Chanel, or is it time to start looking at a bigger linebacker like a Cody Lindenberg or a Demetrius Knight or someone like that to come in and play the new Big Sam role? So yeah, it's one of those things. But great regimes like the Bills, like the Ravens, like the Chiefs, they have 2 things in common. They've got great leadership, and then they've got a great quarterback, which kind of helps all those things too.
And I think something that should also be like fans need to be reminded of. So most NFL teams, Bills, Chiefs included, if you look at the rosters 4 years apart, the likelihood is there's only going to be about 15 players that carry over a 4-year time period. Right? 15 is a lot. Right? So I think Draft Professor did this research during Wild Card Week, as well as we presented some of it also the week of the championship games. But if you look at the Bills, the Chiefs, and the Eagles specifically, they have right around 15 to 18 players that were on the team 4 years ago. Right? So going back to the point about you have to be able to draft starters.
Yeah.
And it's really the key to success is you want players that outperform the value of their contracts, and you're more likely to get a rookie or somebody on a rookie deal to outperform their contract than you are with whatever free agent you sign.
Yeah, and you can even take it one step further, right? Like one of the kind of hidden value Moneyball on base percentage factors too is like a lot of times these teams that are better at drafting, they're also the teams that kill the undrafted free agent signing. Like I'm trying to remember there's someone who does a great job of covering the UDFAs, right? When that season starts, the Chiefs are always one of the top UDFA classes. And to me, that's no coincidence. I mean, they've gotten key contributions from some guys there too, whether it be special teams, which like the Chiefs, their special teams are always really strong, minus one year. And, like this year, like Christian Roland Wallace, he was a slot cornerback from USC. He was more of a safety. They put him there. He's had a couple of interceptions and was able to step up in a time when they had to move Trent McDuffie out wide and that they didn't really have a great answer in the slot. And, those are the type of role players and stuff that people forget because you need people to step into those. It takes way more than 53 to make it through a football season. And, in the aggregate, like when it comes down to literal inches between the Chiefs and the Bills, being in Arrowhead, going in 15-1 to have that, like you needed that interception from Chris Roland Wallace against Brock Purdy in week 7. So it all matters.
Yep, definitely. And to add to that, right, you don't always look at just who makes the 53. So there's a really good history in Buffalo of a UDFA that makes the practice squad, and 1 or 2 years later, they're on the 53. So it may not be immediate. And the examples in Buffalo, Cam Lewis started on the practice squad, and he's now Buffalo's like Swiss Army knife DB. If Taron Johnson goes down, it's Cam Lewis. Boundary corner goes down, it's Cam Lewis. Safety goes out, it's Cam Lewis. So he plays all the positions. I'm not saying he plays them well, but he knows the defense well enough that he is the number one guy off the bench for all 3 of those spots.
Yeah.
And then we have some offensive linemen as well, where like Richard Guriage immediately comes to mind as he was a UDFA. And I'd have to go look to see if he actually made it onto the 53. But Ryan Vandemark spent a year on the practice squad, and he is now the backup swing tackle behind Deion Dawkins and Spencer Brown.
Yeah.
So starts on the practice squad, gets into the NFL strength and conditioning program, and can make the team his 2nd or his 3rd year.
Yeah, Chiefs had Turk Wharton, who was a UDFA, went to Missouri Science and Technical University here. Shout out to Rolla, Missouri, the Miners, Dig Deep Miners. He was a guy who made the roster as UDFA his first year and just made like over 50 million guaranteed with the Panthers. So, and that's also overcoming an ACL injury that he had in 2022. So yeah, I mean, there's something to that player development. Like, I think that's probably one of the biggest underrated things about NFL football right now is taking players from other rosters and making them better players. Like, we forget about that so much. Like, we're used to Madden, which is like, all right, plug this guy in who's an 83, my offense is better. But being able to take players and make them better, right? And that's what we see some of the best offenses do in the NFL, right? Like taking a player using their strengths. Again, back to the Rashee Rice example, like, hey, you're not very good at this, but you are really explosive after we get the ball in your hands. What if we just get the ball in your hands as quickly as possible and just let you go get the field, right? So that player development, it's huge. And that goes to day 3 picks, day 2 picks, UDFAs, but those are the things. And obviously, like, going back to the most obvious point, like, it helps when you've got a quarterback.
And to your point also, NFL coaching is at a different level than college or high school. And like, one of the questions that I like talking to players about or coaches about is, when is the first time a player gets a position-specific coach? So meaning like a wide receiver in high school, it could be an offensive coordinator and an assistant offensive coordinator, and they have to coach the offensive line, the receivers, the backs, the tight ends. So you don't necessarily get a lot of position-specific expertise. At college, it gets a little bit more. But then, like, Keon Coleman even started burning some bridges at Florida State because as soon as he was with Buffalo, he started saying the Florida State coaches weren't very good.
Well, and I mean, you look at it too, like, what we see time over time is the game at the lower level, high school and college, the change starts at the bottom and works its way up, right? Like, there for a long time, the NFL, like right now, the NFL feels like it has way more okay quarterbacks than it ever had. It used to have like the greats and then the have-nots. And now there's just a bunch of like Kyler Murray, like, I don't know, like, is he good? Is he not good? I don't really know. And part of it is because the game has changed. The way that these players play the game is different. Like, they're taking less off the quarterback's plate. But look at what's happening in the college game now. Like, guys are entering the transfer portal in the middle of the college football playoff. That happened this year with Penn State, where their quarterback is transferring to Mizzou, like, in the middle of the college football playoff. Their backup, obviously not Drew Aller, but you go back to like what happened. For instance, I think San Diego State, Air Coryell offense, right? Like, his offense became so prevalent, the air raid, because it was something that he could get these guys who were like, guys who couldn't cut it at the big programs. And you bring these wide receivers in and you just number the routes. Hey, you run route 1. So then the play call, we read off a set of numbers and you go run route 1 or route 2. That's happening at the college level. You look at you watch some of Tennessee, what Josh Heupel runs, right? Where it's like literally like 3 or 4 routes. We just finished talking about Ole Miss. These college players, these college coaches, they're doing whatever they can to win. And you might not have all install all year to develop these guys. You might be getting this guy who's a former 5-star in your door mid-spring and got to find a system for him. So I suspect that those things will continue to trickle their way up. But yeah, like for someone like Keon Coleman, another guy, by the way, who kind of suffered from that, like the offense, it really wasn't asking a whole lot. Jordan Travis was, kind of a run and gun. It was either RPO or we're handing it off offense. I think that we will see that more of those changes impact, and player development again is one of those things. Being able to say, I haven't seen this from this player on tape, but can they do it? That's one of the hardest questions to answer.
Yep. So that was a really long explanation of why Nick Scourton is my guy.
Yeah, so love Nick Scourton, right? Yeah, love Nick Scourton. Okay, so back to the topic at hand. Good conversations though to have. All right, so let's see here. I'll highlight this guy because I feel like he's a guy that a lot of draft people love. A+ name. It's Kobe Bryant, the corner out of Kansas. I'm going to be biased here. I love Kobe Bryant because he has interacted with several of my posts on social media. In my 2025 way too early mock draft that comes out, the week after the draft, I mocked him to the Chiefs in the 3rd, which, by the way, I like pretty much nailed that draft position. Like I feel he's going to be a 3rd or 4th round pick. And he quote tweets it and says, "Come get me, Chiefs." Which, I mean, if you're a kid who goes to Lawrence, Kansas, driving like spitting distance from Kansas City, yeah, you'd want the Chiefs to draft you. And then like to go one step further, found a great one-on-one clip of him and Jalen Noel when I was looking at Jalen Noel. Jalen Noel gets them really good. It's also like a really hard look. I think Iowa State's got 3 like fullback / running backs it's a full backfield, and they run like a full fakes, like it's a cover 0 blitz, one-on-one. Him and Jalen Noel gets the best of them. Big game. And I just tweeted out a clip like Kobe Bryant versus Jalen Noel. Kobe Bryant quote tweets it and says, "Post the game tape, post the rest of the tape." And Jalen Noel starts like clapping back at him. And there's all these KU and Iowa State fans arguing in the comments. And I'm just here trying to write a draft profile on Jalen Noel. But that's what I love about Kobe Bryant. Like everyone says, and you watch him on tape, he is a dog. Like he is 6 foot, 180 pounds, which I know he was very proud of being 180 pounds or whatever he was at the combine, because he is a smaller framed guy, but he lays the thump of the run. He's a willing participant in the run game. He is physical. He's got a great knack for getting to the ball, and he will let you know about it all day. I heard stories about him at the East West Shrine Bowl that he was giving it to guys. Like there was some receiver, I can't remember who he had the first day, and he just kicked his ass the whole day. And he would not let him forget about it the rest of the week. And I tell you what, if he runs across that guy in the NFL, he's still going to be talking about the Shrine Bowl practice and how he was just eating him up. So I love Kobe Bryant. I love his mentality. I'm very interested to see where he ends up at the next level. I could see him in the slot. I think that because of his willingness to participate in the run game, I think that he would be a great slot defender, but I would still give him a chance on the outside. We've seen guys like this before who are physical enough that they can take on bigger receivers because of their willingness to get their bodies involved and his knack for getting the ball. Lots of interception productions, lots of passes defense. Love Kobe Bryant.
Yeah, it was when we were doing scouting reports from October to December, and Kobe Bryant came up on a couple. Like, to me, that was actually a Spagnuolo DB. Like, he would look really good in the Chiefs uniform. I don't necessarily think he's what Buffalo would covet, but
Buffalo's like, they've got this unique ability to take these kind of bigger bodied, a little bit slower corners, and they end up like working really good. Like they're like seem to like hound those like 4'5", 4'6" corners and end up working for them. Yeah, he's a little light for them. They do like kind of that more like 6'2", 200-pound long arms, but his willingness to participate in the run is something that I think is definitely there. And he's one of those guys like I think this year the Chiefs bring in Christian Fulton to get Trent McDuffie back in the slot, which is definitely where he's at his best. That's why I love that move, because you get better at outside corner and you put an all-pro back in the slot, which Trent McDuffie still was a second-team all-pro as an outside corner, which is incredible talent there. But, Kobe Bryant, he has that ability too. And it makes you more versatile, more able to kind of go out and make your scheme more dynamic. And yeah, like I could totally see him on slot blitz, just coming out in the backfield, right? So he's a really fun player. Obviously here in Missouri, we have it's very tough creating Chiefs content, especially around the draft. You got to sprinkle in a little Luther Burden, a little DJ Giddens, a little Jacob Parrish, make everyone happy. Devin Neal, like Chiefs fans, if I write a mock draft and I've got him taking a running back, should have taken Neal, should have got Neal. So, but hey, it's fun. It's a great place to be because there is so many big schools all in this kind of Kansas City area.
You see, and that's interesting because I grew up in Western New York, so it's the exact opposite. So where I grew up, Penn State and Syracuse were the two closest Division I schools. But they were still, like, Syracuse was 100 miles away, and I would have to guess that Penn State was 200 or 250. Now the University of Buffalo is D1, but it was not D1 when I grew up. But, like, it was when I went to college in Michigan. I did not go at Michigan, but I went in Michigan. I was fascinated, like, what's everybody doing on a Saturday? Everybody was huddled around watching. It was either Michigan or Michigan State. Whatever.
Oh, yeah.
I had never seen anything like that in my life.
Yeah, Kansas City is a great college town. The Big 12 tournament for college basketball is here every year in Kansas City, in our downtown area. It's a big basketball state, believe it or not. Like, I wish the NBA would come here because Kansas basketball is obviously really, really good. We have the Big 12 tournament. The College Basketball Hall of Fame is here in Kansas City as well. So lots of basketball tradition here. Obviously a great football state too, where we've had Mizzou be good there for a while. When I was young, Mizzou and KU back, like those Todd Reesings, Aqib Talib, Chase Daniels here, Jeremy Macklin. Like, oh, it was so fun when that rivalry was at its peak. K-State's always been good under the Snyder family and everything that they've done there. So it's a great college sports town. And like, I'll take it one further. I got my Nebraska helmet back here. I'm a Nebraska fan. My buddies who live up in Nebraska, I usually go to a game or two a year. Up there, like, it is Nebraska 24/7 all the time. The funniest thing, you walk out of Lincoln Memorial Stadium, the game's over, you go out in the parking lot, you can just find all of the people have their TVs up, during the game, your pregame, and you're watching the noon slate of games. They're sitting there watching Matt Rule's press conference after the game. Like, they're that hardcore. They know all these guys in and out. And like, yeah, college sports, it's a whole nother game. And it is fun too, because when you make draft content, it's kind of like a way to connect with those fan bases. And that's why I love the draft. Like, I really fell in love with the draft in 2023 when it was here in Kansas City, standing there surrounded by Packers and Steelers fans taking in the draft organically. Like, that was the one night I didn't tip the picks on Twitter. Just want to sit there and watch, taking it in with their fans and being like, oh, this is so cool. You got your left tackle of the future. Or I knew the Packers would take Lucas Van Ness. Like, it was so fun. So that's the fun thing about the draft, is connecting with college fan bases and NFL bases.
And to me, that's also the draft celebrates all 32 teams. Like Super Bowl, you're celebrating 2 teams.
Absolutely.
The draft, you're celebrating all 32. So I was at the draft in Detroit.
The only time Browns fans have hope. That's all we can give them is the draft.
Yeah. So who's your next my guy?
Okay, so I'll go a little. The first couple guys I feel like I've taken are pretty mainstream. I'll go a little less mainstream here. I am a father of 2 young children. I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. I do not need a Corvette. All right, it's just not practical. They're hard to get in and out of. They can't really hold many groceries. The car seats, they don't go in well. Probably more better suited for an SUV or a minivan, something that's a little bit more practical. That does not stop me from wanting a Corvette because they look cool and they go fast. Let me tell you about one of my favorite Corvettes in this draft, Dante Thornton. 6'3", 205 pounds, 4.3 40. He only does 2 or 3 things. That Josh Heupel offense from Tennessee, the wide receiver, he just runs straight. Sometimes he runs a post. He just runs straight and he runs fast, but look at the big man go fast. And I love this about him because there are a lot of people, a lot of players in the NFL who have made a career out of being a sacrificial X, running and going and touch the goalpost and come back. And when he gets the ball in his hands, he can fly. And that is super valuable. And don't be surprised if Dante Thornton goes way sooner than a lot of people are expecting because of his ability to do that. You take a guy like Jalen Hyatt, a guy who wins the Blitnikoff over Marvin Harrison Jr. Should this guy be a first-round pick? Well, no. He's a little bit smaller than Thornton was, and he's fast, but he still only runs those like 3 or 4 routes. Can he do the other things? But you take Thornton, who has the size, who can be a sacrificial X, and the fact that he does those 3 or 4 things, like I'm shocked by his ability to like just do those things and do them well. The Chiefs actually had Bryce Cabdoodle in for a 30 visit. A lot of Chiefs fans really like Logan Brown, but I need to take a look at him. I read his write up on the Beast, but I haven't actually taken a look at him. But I will have to take a second look after looking at Devin Neal's tape. But Dante Thornton is just big dumb fun. And like again, is he ever going to have a 1,500-yard season? No, probably not. I think his upside is Marquez Valdes-Scantling. But hey, that guy's been in the league for a long time, and that's 2-time Super Bowl champion Marquez Valdes-Scantling to you. So Dante Thornton, my guy.
Nice. And I think that's also a good point about, let's say, team building. Sometimes you're looking for that wide receiver who's just going to be able to do his role for 4 or 6 years. And it's okay for that to be 40 catches for 500 yards. That's a legitimate role on the offense.
Yeah, and I think like, you know, the ability to block, which is something that he does well. There are some players in this draft that they will find the field quickly as a wide receiver strictly because of the run blocking. Alec Ayumanor comes to mind right away. This is a guy who takes pride in his run blocking. And you look at some of the systems that are really prevalent in the NFL right now, like the Shanahan systems, like the Sean McVay systems. Robert Woods, another one of those guys, right? Like who like made an NFL career off of being a great run blocker. That stuff matters, especially like going back to the Chiefs as always. Like, you know, the Chiefs, like they've got like 3 wide receivers that if you total their body weight together, they don't break 300 pounds right now with Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy. They had McCole Hardman for a little bit. You need someone in there to get there to do the dirty work, right? And those guys matter. And those guys, you know, like there's a reason why Justin Watson played like 60 to 70% of the offensive snaps for the Chiefs because he was willing to do those type of things. And it's hard to run a wide receiver screen to Rashee Rice if you don't got people out there blocking for him. Keep in mind too, I chart for FTN Fantasy and I watch all 22 for the NFL. And this year my team was the Saints. And that offense really struggled when they started losing some of their wide receivers because they run out there to run a wide receiver screen or something. It's like, oh, hey, look, there's Juwan Johnson and Foster Monroe out there in a bunch set. I wonder what's going to happen next. Oh, Alvin Kamara standing behind them. Wonder what happens next. Oh, it's a bubble screen, a tunnel screen, you know? So being able to have your guys out there that can run real routes, but still be able to be blockers in the screen game or the run game really matters.
Cool. Who is your next my guy?
Okay, so let's go to the defensive side of the ball, and I am going to go with, let's see here. I got so many to choose from. Oh, you know what? We kind of did big dumb fun. I'll go with my Nebraska guy, only because he's a guy that not as many people are talking about. It's Tommy Hill, the cornerback from Nebraska. I reached the pinnacle, the mountain of being a Nebraska fan as Tommy Hill picks off Shedeur Sanders for a pick 6 in Lincoln Memorial Stadium, the only player to have a pick 6 on Shedeur Sanders this season. Long, physical corner on the outside. I actually like his floor because I think he could be a safety convert, a willing participant in the run game. Great ball skills as a converted wide receiver, a better athlete than he gets credit for. All these things sound really exciting for a guy who at one time was a first-round pick in Field Yates mock draft in August, or maybe it was October. Why would he be, you know, a day 3 candidate? Well, he got a foot injury towards the back part of the year and played hurt, and just never really seemed to healed up all the way. This is a guy who I feel like has that Spagnuolo system rent all over him. The length, the ability, and the run game. Good ball skills as a converted wide receiver. Also a guy that can make your roster because he is a special teams returner as well. Had a couple of big kick returns for Nebraska. 6 foot, 213 pounds, 32 7/8 arms. So I really like his floor and his ability to make an NFL roster. Like I said, I think he could be kind of a safety hybrid because of how he's constructed, how he carries his body weight. But I really like Tommy Hill. I want to give him a shout out. I think, Ty Robinson will probably be the first Husker taken. Maybe Isaiah Nair gets drafted because his RAS profile was great, which shout out to their strength and conditioning program. But Tommy Hill is a guy that I could see a sneaky impact if he finds the right landing spot.
I like that call out. Like, we should have done a podcast a long time ago about corners that could convert to safeties, because I think when you're in, let's say, round 6 and 7, and you're looking for how do you roster a player, like I know in the Epic Mock, you got Jordan Hancock as Mr. Irrelevant, and that would be, is he a safety? Is he a corner? You'll be able to put him on the roster as the 9th or the 10th DB because he can probably play multiple roles. So note to self.
And I mean, like, honestly, those are a lot of things that we heard about L'Jarius Sneed when he came out. Like, is he a safety? Is he a corner? Same with Shamari Connor, which Shamari Connor is kind of a curse word around here with Kansas City here lately. But he's a guy, again, who's played a lot of valuable snaps for the Chiefs. So they like those guys who can mix in and out. And I mean, you've got the AFC Championship in 2023. You've got Drew Tranquill, who's running back and covering deep safety on the deep half of the field. So it's not positionalist football, but it's as close as it can get to it. So having a guy like that who can do those things, you'll love to see it.
Yep. So, and then to build on that, when Christian Benford was drafted, Bills Mafia was saying convert him to safety. That was like the scouting report on him, the day after the draft.
And that was kind of like the time when Poyer and Hyde were kind of starting to get injured a lot, and they were probably looking for that next answer there.
Right. So you have another my guy you want to talk about?
Yeah, sure. Let's go with one of my favorite guys to watch run, and it's RJ Harvey, the running back from UCF. First off, love a guy who's a former quarterback, which he is. He's converted to running back. In fact, he hadn't played running back at all until he gets to UCF, and then he just goes out and becomes highly productive. Love how shifty he is. He constantly makes big plays. One of the things I like about him, I get kind of Austin Eckler vibes, like, not the current version of Austin Eckler, but low center of gravity. The legs are always turning. Love him outside of the tackles, in between the tackles, depending on the scheme. But he's the type of guy, I think ideally he could be the Lightning and the Thunder and Lightning tandem in a backfield. And I do think that he could be closer to a, full-time back, but explosive, good in the passing game, one of the better pass protectors in the class. Had a huge catch on a wheel route against, I believe it was Florida. But I really like RJ Harvey. I think he's explosive. I think this could be one of the backs that could have a surprising impact. To me, I kind of see shades of what Keaton Mitchell was his rookie year with the Ravens, where it's just a different look, a little bit undersized. I think he's 5'9", 205 pounds, but really like him too. And I don't know, man, this is just a guy that I think a lot of teams could use a player like this, where might not be a guy that you want to run your whole passing offense through. But I mean, how many running backs are true bell cows at this point in the NFL? Not that many. So love RJ Harvey.
So I have an RJ Harvey question for you that's fantasy football related. Are you taking Harvey in round 1 or round 2?
That's tough, right? I've got a couple of dynasty leagues right now. The Northland 69ers, my fantasy football roster, we're in the middle of a rebuild, and we were named Ashton Genty's next team for quite some time, but we did trade away the first round pick for Saquon Barkley, so a little bit of a coup there. But I've got the 5th or 6th pick, and it's so hard with these guys because it's all about landing spot, right? You put RJ Harvey. I'm trying to think you put RJ Harvey on the Jaguars, for example. They've got that new system from Tampa Bay. Bucky Irving goes there. There's not really you've got some, you've got the remnants of Travis Etienne there, but you could see a first round pick depending on what size your league is. But if he goes somewhere where he's buried a little bit, then yeah, you kind of worry about landing spots. So specific, especially about fantasy football, is just what are there opportunities to play, right? So I don't know, that one's tough. I would love him in Kansas City because I think you've got your first down guys with Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt. I think Kareem Hunt's probably going to be short yardage and pass protection, but I love RJ Harvey as a change of pace guy. He's the type of guy that you want to get going on a draw. And one of the things I like about him too is like he's got good vision. Like he doesn't miss a gap if it's there. And that's where that quarterback stuff comes in, right? And I know it's silly, but Xavier Worthy threw a bunch of passes for Texas back when he was running routes out there. I love a guy who's like, you could at least fathom them dropping back and throwing the ball. It's good to just have that threat. So he's a guy that I'm probably much higher on than consensus.
So I think you might be higher than consensus, but it's interesting because I know Jake, who did running backs back in October, RJ Harvey was his RB3.
Yeah, not that high. Shout out to him. Shout out to him.
And Jake's quote, "I want a running back that runs the ball."
Yeah, and like and you know, I want a running back who can get to space and get what's given to you. And that feels like his floor, where it's like, hey, we blocked this play up for 10 yards. He's getting 10 yards. He can get to those running lanes with his speed and ability. And, you know, like it's, again, kind of a curse word in Kansas City, but you see some of like, I went back and watched some highlights from the Alabama LSU game, that great game with, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was the freaking star of that game. And you see some of those shades with the lower center of gravity. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was a good football player. He had a bunch of injuries, get hurt. Yeah, he probably shouldn't have been the 32nd pick in that draft, but he was a good football player when he came back, and injuries just really robbed him of some of his explosiveness. But you can kind of see that, like, low center of gravity. Kind of reminds me of, who was that Eagles running back? He was with the Eagles and the Saints.
Okay, give me a minute.
Kansas State. It'll come to me.
No, I was okay. As soon as you said Eagles, did Sproles?
Sproles, yeah, kind of.
Okay, because I was thinking Sproles
yeah.
was the Chargers, but he also played for the Eagles and the Saints, right?
Yeah, I think so. Pretty sure he did.
Okay, we're there. Okay,
all right.
Do you have another my guy?
I'll give you one more because I think I could go on all day about these guys. Last guy, I'll take a first round guy just because not everyone's locked in all these guys. It's Walter Nolan. I love Walter Nolan. First off, one of the things that I love about him, this is just like a picky thing. I love a guy when you sit there and you read their numbers and you're like, okay, 6'3", 290 pounds. This is a big guy. And you look at his frame, you're like, God, dude, this guy looks like a freaking athlete at 290 pounds. Like, you see Chris Jones in street clothes, there is no mistaking that guy for a tubby dude. Like, he is an athlete. Love the way that Walter Nolan carries his weight. You see him in street clothes, there's no mistake about it. This guy is an athlete. But other thing I like about it too is like his frame looks like he can put on more muscle. Walter Nolan's flashes are among like the top 10, top 15 players in this draft. He is an underrated run stuffer. I think a lot of people, when they talk about Nolan, they talk about the pass rush flashes. That's obviously what's going to get him drafted in the first round, likely. But he is a underrated run defender. He is stout. He, mostly at 3 tech, but his lower core is super stout, super strong. His eyes are always in the backfield. And something that I love about Walter Nolan is there's a couple of times a game where it feels like, I'm not really sure he's concerned with getting the ball carrier. I think he might just want to kill the dude who's across from him. There's a couple of plays even that you can see where he's celebrating knocking the dude down across from him more than chasing down the ball carrier. But Walter Nolan's ceiling is as high as almost any player in this draft. Say maybe it's Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter. And the question is like, how are you going to get the best out of him? There's some questions about motivation and character for him, nothing criminal or anything like that. Sounds like it's mostly just like, this is a big personality guy that you got to kind of keep focused. But he seems like a guy that him landing in the back part of the draft might be the best thing for him. If he gets with the Bills or the Eagles or the Chiefs or something like that, get with a guy like a Jalen Carter or a Chris Jones or an Ed Oliver could be the best thing for him. Penetrating gap shooter that can stay on the field and run downs. He's got the potential to be a star. And those type of guys just really excite me. I tweeted out a video the other day, the classic, like the call video that they do. It's like, hey, this is General Manager Brett Veach from the Kansas City Chiefs. How you doing? I said, Walter Nolan's phone. It's in exactly 7 days. So that's kind of like who the Chiefs fans are all hoping for. And again, I think it goes back to the Chris Jones thing. You see his body. He's not as tall as Chris Jones. Chris Jones is like 6'6", but you see the body, you see the frame, and you see those penetration skills, and you can really see it. And Joe Cullen's a great defensive line coach, so I'd love for him to work with it. So Walter Nolan, no matter what.
Yeah, so let's talk about the Ole Miss defense for a second. What Ole Miss defensive player is drafted the highest?
Ooh, I don't know. I feel like Amos has the safer floor because like if we're sitting here night 2 and like, gosh, pick 53, Walter Nolan's still on the board. You just say like, hey, those character things, they were real. People got some questions, right? But like I feel like Amos has the safest floor, even though like he's kind of a 1-year starter. I felt like what he put on tape was probably the most safe. Um,
Do you think
boy,
Princely could go higher than either Nolan?
that's what I
or
was gonna
Amos?
say. Like maybe I feel like the scheme there could come into play too, right? Like I feel like everyone can use a Trey Amos. I feel like everyone can use a Walter Nolan. I'm not sure every team would be in on Princely, but I
Yeah.
do love Princely and love his ability. So I think safe money is still Nolan because I just think like again, the flashes are top 15 flashes, and we've seen the defensive tackle position like it kind of it's one of those sneaky like highly valuable positions in the NFL. One of those sneaky really important positions now. So I think Nolan's the safe money, but I think if you're like looking for something that's a little plus AV or EV, a little plus 500 or something like that, Uman Mellon could be the play, right? Like maybe the Buccaneers they like him over Ezeraku or someone like that. You could see him sneaking into the back of the first. And then Amos too. I don't think Pupal really like him, Jared Ivey, JJ Pegas. I think those guys are, probably day 2, day 3 guys.
Agreed. So I asked Paul that question when I interviewed him. He didn't even hesitate. He said Nolan is going to be the first Ole Miss defender picked. He says he's never played with a player that was that good.
And you love to hear that stuff, right? And he's also a guy, you look at his productivity, got better every single year. And that's something like he had the reverse Texas A&M effect where like he left Texas A&M and his numbers went up. So it's like, okay, he's another guy that I try to bring up when I talk about that front and just how unique they play. But yeah, I love that about a guy too, right? Like we see these athletes, right? Like, hey, who's the best corner in the world? Jalen Ramsey. It's Jalen Ramsey. Like Pupal could have easily been like me. Of course it's me. I'm a dog. I'm a star. But instead he just like automatically went to praising his teammates. Love to see that from a linebacker, a guy who's kind of a captain of a defense. So love to see that from a player.
Yeah. So in my huddle mock draft that I am submitting right now, I have Trey Amos as the highest Ole Miss defender being drafted. He's being drafted at 27 by the Ravens. I think Ravens are 27. I think I have the number right. So it's 27 to the Ravens. And I believe I have Nolan going to the Chiefs.
That is correct. Good job. Yeah. I give you a passing score.
So, and like for me, like I had Buffalo taking Kenneth Grant over Walter Nolan. And I'm sitting here debating that because I do think Nolan's ceiling and Brandon Beane does tend to draft for the ceiling. I think like Bills Mafia, like if you go to the most popular Bills podcasters, they're saying Amos is the pick. But to your point, Amos is a floor pick. And Brandon Beane is not a floor drafter in round 1.
Yeah. And I could see just like a little bit of redundancy with Oliver and Nolan. But either way, like just as a Chiefs fan, like I think the Bills, like they were barking up the right tree with Von Miller. They just didn't make the right move there. Like that pass rush has got to get scarier, right? Like it in big games, it just seems to disappear. And Kenneth Grant, as good of a player as he is, or let's throw like Tyreek Williams into this game, as good of players as they are, they're not a guy who's going to be impacting the game in those moments when it's when it's 13 seconds and the Chiefs get down the field, right? Like that's not their moment. And if you're going for the ceiling, then Walter Nolan, that's a moment where a batted pass can make all the difference in winning or losing a game, right? So I definitely think that's like kind of the tree that they need to be barking up. But you're right, like Brandon Beane, he's a guy that looks at that ceiling. Keon Coleman's a great example of that, right? Like a guy who looks like he's been etched out of marble, just like a super freak athlete in the flashes that you see him at the catch point, those type of things. They're wide receiver one stuff. You just got to kind of get through the marble to get to those traits.
Yep. Yeah. And to your point about like Von Miller. So Von Miller, up until he got injured against Detroit, was having one of the best years of his career. He was averaging a sack a game, but then you blow out your knee and you're like 37 years old.
Yeah, and I mean, that's kind of the risk they took, right? Like old guys, they get hurt, right? Like you sign a 33-year-old pass rusher at that point with a guy whose primary trait is speed. Is what happens, right? And again, like going back to like what the Bills are working towards right now, like younger guys stay healthy. The Chiefs have been one of the more healthy teams in the NFL the last couple of years. It's no coincidence that they've also been the team that has been playing the longest at the end of every season, right? And young guys stay healthy. It's just part of it, right? Old guys get hurt. So that was one of those things that at the time it's just like an all-in move. But hey, like credit to them. Buffalo's never had a Super Bowl championship before. The Chiefs, they made that same type of move with Frank Clark. And I'd be willing to tell you that Frank Clark wasn't really that big of a coup for the Chiefs, right? Like they won, so it didn't really matter. But they ended up giving a first and a second round pick for a guy who mostly was a flop in the regular season. He just happened to show up in the biggest moments. And, we can debate whether he was the reason why they were in those moments or if it was number 15. But he was a closer, and he's like the Chiefs' all-time leader in sacks, which is just crazy to think about when you think about some of the amazing pass rushers that have been here: Derek Thomas, Justin Houston, Jared Allen. But number 15 is the reason why Frank Clark gets that title.
And I think to your point also about like drafting well, that we talked about at the beginning, I think from a team building philosophy, you can find a designated pass rusher in free agency. Like whether it's a Leonard Floyd, a Von Miller, those guys are around every year, and they're being paid 10 or 15 million a year, and you're bringing them in to rush the passer.
And I think there's a lot of guys in this draft that fit that mold too, right? Like I know a lot of people are crazy about Josiah Stewart's run defense, but I think early that could be something, or Braden Swenson's another guy, right? Like pass, DPR. And the Chiefs, like that's something with them that like they trade for Josh Uche in the middle of the season, and we're all excited. Like, oh man, finally, we can get someone who can get to the quarterback in under 3 seconds, and like put him on a milk bottle, put on an Amber Alert for Josh Uche as soon as he gets to Kansas City. Sure enough, week 18 when the Chiefs just like don't play any of their starters against the Broncos, there's Josh Uche playing off-ball linebacker. Because like that's just what they needed at the time. Like, so whenever I have to laugh when I see the mocks that got the Chiefs taking like Ezaraku or James Pierce, is like they're not doing that. Like if you're not like 6'3", 280 pounds, you ain't rushing off the edge for the Chiefs.
Right. And to where I was going with that is that you find your designated pass rushers. If you can't find them in the draft, you can always find them in free agency. But what is really difficult to find in free agency at edge are the 280-pound guys that set the edge. Because those are the guys you make sure that you have, the Greg Rousseaus and whoever get the contract extensions. So to me, like going back to like, okay, Buffalo's been looking for an edge. My opinion is that Beane stopped looking in the draft. And to me, that's if I have to poke some holes at his drafting, you have to be willing to target the position, even if it's round 5 or 6. So Buffalo double dipped with Basham and Rousseau. We did round 1, 2. That was the COVID draft. The year before, we drafted Epinesa in round 2. So we had 3 edges that we drafted in a 2-year stretch. Buffalo then went 3 years without drafting a single edge.
I was going to say, I cannot remember the last edge rusher that they drafted.
And it was Javon Solomon last year.
Yeah, I cannot remember a single Javon Solomon moment right now. None come to me.
There really aren't any. Like he did have a couple of moments, right, in whatever limited snaps he had. But my point being is like from a team building standpoint,
the Chiefs are basically there right now with defensive tackle. Like it's Chris Jones and the Chris Jonettes, right? Like they're just the backup singers. Like Tershawn Wharton was a diamond in the rough that they found, but they're perfectly content in like something that I wonder about the draft. Ifeatili, Williams was there or Kenneth Grant, I'm not even sure the Chiefs would take that player. Like they just don't seem to put a big priority on these, a true one tech nose tackle, which honestly, like some of these guys are some of the most valuable guys in the league right now, like Ali McNeil, players like that are able to stop the run with a 4-man box so you can play dime behind there. Like that's super valuable. But the Chiefs, they just seem totally content to bring in 32-year-old Mike Pennell, or used to be Derek Nottie or whatever, and we'll just have Chris Jones or Ed Oliver in your case. So you can kind of add into that draft conversation where it's like, we're going to have a pass rush first guy on the inside, and then we can bring in guys who can mix in on the inside. The Chiefs have kicked Charles Omenihu, George Karlaftis. They've had all those different guys, Frank Clark, that can kick inside. This is where you put Jared Ivey, Savion Jones, Elijah Roberts, or whatever at 3-tech. And, they put in that NASCAR package where basically they've got 4 pass rushers on those downs. And that's really what they've kind of done. And yeah, I mean, I honestly, man, like sometimes it's not the worst thing to just say like, hey, we can find this other places. Where is this undervalued at?
And I also think part of the issue with drafting is, how do I want to say this? This year is unique in that we're probably going to see like 10 or 15 defensive tackles go in the first 100. But there's not usually more than like 7 that go. And like we're going to double it this year. It's just crazy how stacked the class is. So meaning that, like, to me, it like if I'm looking at tendencies, Brandon Beane hasn't drafted defensive tackles after round 3. Right? Like,
yeah.
If he can't get one in the top 100, he doesn't want them. He'll draft them. The Olivers, the Dwayne Carters, the Harrison Phillips. But he's never drafted one after round 3.
And it does kind of seem like, you run your mock draft simulators or whatever, and it's like, let's grab Tim Smith here in the 6th or whatever, just, and it feels like there's those type of guys every year that you feel like should be there. But then you see a guy like Siaka Ika from Baylor, who's now on the Chiefs practice squad, who was a top 100 pick, and you felt really good about his floor as a player. It's like, hey, this is a guy who can come in and stop the run, and then boom, they're not on an NFL roster anymore, on a team that is desperate for NFL talent. So that's one of those things too. Like you got to wonder. Brett Veach, he did his usual NFL press conference type of thing right before the draft, and they asked him, where do you see the depth in the class? And he went to edge and running back, which, okay, he's not wrong, but the noticeable omission from defensive tackle was a little bit surprising, because that feels like one of the positions that everyone goes right to is defensive tackle. And I think, if we're talking about it, maybe one reason to kind of go back to that is maybe the ceiling of this defensive tackle class isn't as high as some of the others. Like I'm of the opinion
that's a great call.
Where would you have Byron Murphy in this class? Would he be would you have him over Mason Graham?
No.
I don't know. It's tough. It's tough. Yeah. I mean,
I think Murphy go top 10.
No, I believe Murphy went like 15 or 18 to the Seahawks, right? I'll go back and look, but I don't know. Like Byron Murphy's another one of those guys. Like that's another name that comes to mind when I think Walter Nolan, by the way, another guy who just carries his weight really well, a super athlete at the position. But like, you wonder about that, where it's like Mason Graham, you love him because of the floor. Like I really like Mason Graham. I think he's going to be a good player. I don't know if he's going to be an all-pro. I don't know if he's going to be a Pro Bowl player. And at pick 5, pick 6, that's what you're kind of hoping that you're going to get, right?
And it was interesting as I was, doing my huddle report mock, and I'm like, I think we've overhyped Mason Graham going as high as we have because he's safe. Because I also agree with your take earlier that I actually think Walter Nolan has a higher ceiling than Graham, and there's a reasonable chance that he is the best defensive tackle of the class.
Yeah. I mean, you could totally see it, right? Like it's just a classic floor ceiling argument, right? Like I feel very confident about Mason Graham getting a second contract in the NFL for a team. Like to me, like I look at him, I see like Zach Allen, right? Like a guy who's carved out a great NFL career, and been more productive, surprisingly productive. But like again, you're measuring the floor, whereas Walter Nolan, like, hey, he's Jalen Carter, or Is he, a guy that's not cutting it? Is he a guy who's, struggling for playing time? You could see either way, right? And that's kind of like the difference between what makes one a consensus top 5, top 10 pick, and the other a guy that has an upside of top 12 and a floor of out of the first round.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll be really interesting. I'm very excited for the first round. I'm wondering, like, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think I could see it being either way? Do you think that Thursday night is going to be a night filled of trades and surprising picks? Or do you think it's going to be a little bit more consensus, snooze fest, teams sticking and picking? Because last year, let's just take out the Michael Penix pick because that was its own thing. For most of the first round, it was kind of just sticking and picking. And to me, I view that as there's a lot of really good talent in these classes. These teams aren't willing to give up the picks because they like the players that they're going to get there. Versus this year, which is a down year. And from what I hear, like everybody wants to trade down except the Chiefs, apparently, of course. Like I feel like the cost of trading up could be at a little bit of a discount because so many teams are ready to trade up. I think we could be in for a wild night on Thursday.
So I think there's a lot of trades. We actually covered this last night that we were going over prop bets for the draft, and somebody had over under 3.5 trades, and it may have even been 2.5. And I said, I'm smashing the over, and I think we can double it.
I feel like the last time we had a class like this was maybe the 2022 class, like the Garrett Wilson, Trent McDuffie. I feel like that class, Evan Neal, I feel like that class had a lot of trades, if I remember right. That was the night Adrian Brown was traded. 2023 had quite a few trades too. To me, this class feels much more closer to the 2023 class than 2024. 2024 was special. I always try to preach like, hey, you got to, the saying like you don't know what you have until it's gone. We needed to stop and appreciate that 2024 class more because like there was guys in that draft who were going in the back end of the first round who were studs.
Yep. So I'm going to say we're at 2 trades in the top 10. Right, just coming right out of the gate, I think there's going to be at least 2 trades in the top 10. The team I have my eye on is Jacksonville, specifically. Jacksonville either going up for Travis Hunter or sliding down a couple spots. So I could see Jacksonville going either direction.
You're taking the move from the Epic Mock, right? That's what they did. They moved up to Travis Hunter.
Right. So, and that part of that was the Epic Mock move. But then part of that, like as I was doing like the huddle report, I'm like, well, if Mason Graham is there, but that's not who Jacksonville wants. Let's say they want Genty. They could move back a couple picks and still get Genty. So what if, let's say, the Jets move up to get Graham and Jacksonville slides down to get Genty before the Raiders pick? So that's where I was going with that.
Yeah, and I you could totally see that happening, right? Like they don't have a bell cow. They go get their guy to kind of help out Trevor Lawrence. I could see that. The quarterbacks are a total wild card in this too, right? Like you want to talk about the biggest drivers of trades, it's quarterbacks. Like if Shadur's fallen and team's ready to go get him, or someone really, gets hard eyes for Jackson Hart or Milroe, especially at the back end, right? Because we feel like there's 2 teams in the top 3, the Giants and the Browns, we're going to pass on quarterback for the better talent and Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter, which it feels like the draft starts at 4, right? Having them come back in, you're going to have a bunch of teams that are willing to trade out of the back end of the first for extra pick. So they go get that 5th-year option, do the Lamar Jackson thing, do the Jordan Love thing, and that's another easy win there.
And then, yeah, so the other trades that I see are actually trading in front of Houston to get a tackle.
Yep,
trading in front of Buffalo to get a corner.
Yeah. I've seen that from the draft stuff we do with the Bills people. There's a lot of concern over corner, so that's one that makes it. But I think the Bills are in a good place to get a corner. Like you're probably saying goodbye to Jahdae Barron, Will Johnson, obviously Travis Hunter, but that next tier of corners with Amos, with AZ Thomas, with Chavon Ravel, like I feel pretty good about their chances of one of those guys getting there.
Well, and they'll get to 30. I'm more of the fan of can we get, like, if you give me Kenneth Grant, Tyleik Williams, Alfred Collins, Revel, Thomas, Amos, and there's probably even a couple of other corners. Give me 2 from that list.
Yeah.
I don't want 1. I'm greedy.
Yeah.
I want 2. So manipulate your picks, trade back a little, trade up a little, get 2 of them. And then the draft starts after Buffalo gets 1 of each.
Yeah, and I mean, like there's always guys that we're surprised at who go in the first round. Like, I think like last year that was kind of like Ricky Pearsall. There's a lot of people that are surprised by that. And then you're looking down, and AD Mitchell's going in the 50s, right? And that's a guy that, like, I remember mocking to the Chiefs, and people were like, oh, he'll never make it to 32. Like, who are you kidding? And then he's in the 50s, so like those things happen. So it's totally plausible, right? Obviously, Matt Miller put out today that the Chiefs are looking to trade ahead of like the Texans to potentially secure a tackle, which is pretty interesting because that is very much tipping your hand, right? But it does make sense. The Packers and the Vikings are right in front of them. Both of those are teams. Like, Packers got a hold of my tweet today talking about this, and all the Packers fans were like, "Oh, trade down, please trade down," which should tell you something too, right? If everybody's team trade down, you got to ask yourself, what are we trading up for? But, maybe the Chiefs see this as the golden opportunity. Like, Josh Simmons is the perfect situation where it's like, hey, here's a top 10 talent at tackle. There's a little bit of maturity questions around him. There's the injury question. This is the classic buy the dip moment. Now, for the Chiefs, if you're trading up and you're probably going to be sacrificing the 3rd round pick or an early day 3 pick to go get them, you better be right. Because like this left tackle position, it's a problem that they've not been able to answer since Eric Fisher tore his Achilles. So fingers
left
crossed.
Tackles don't grow on trees in the back half of round 1.
Yeah, and you've heard me talk about the measurables. The Chiefs never drafted a tackle with sub 34-inch arms in the Andy Reid era. Another layer to fold into this is like, what are we believing? Are we believing the pro days, or are we believing the combine measurements? Right. Yeah. I know, like, I've heard some people who really know what they're talking about, like a Dane Brugel or a Daniel Jeremiah, saying teams are going to believe whatever fits their narrative, right? So if you love the player and he weighed in 10 pounds lighter or 10 pounds heavier at the combine, you're going to believe whatever weight you want to hear. Like, oh, Xavier Worthy, he weighed in at like 165 at the combine. That's what he weighs, not 155 or whatever, right? You're gonna believe that because that's what you want to hear. So be very interesting to see how this plays out. Or are the Chiefs like selling smoke because they really want to trade down, or are they wanting to trade up to 24 to get not a tackle, right? Like maybe they're saying it's tackle, but they will get up there and they're hoping like Colston Loveland or Omarion Hampton or something. Like, it really, anything's on the board. It is line season, as they say.
So if the Chiefs trade up for a running back in this class, I think Chiefs Twitter will explode.
Yeah, I as someone who is going to be spending 3 hours on a live stream with all 55,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel, I'm not sure I'm ready to put out the burning couches that will happen in Kansas City if they trade up. While I do think finally, after this, like, man, I'm telling you, I had people like calling for me to get fired because I said, like, hey, I don't think Isaiah Pacheco should stop you from drafting a running back. I said this last year. People were very, very upset. How could you say that? Isaiah Pacheco is great. He's amazing. Then this year happens, and your mock draft doesn't have a running back until round 4. We need one sooner. So how quickly the turntables. So hopefully that is not the case. Like, I like Omarion Hampton. I wouldn't be mad about him at pick 31. I think some people would, just because they're so sure like something magical happens. Like, oh, you take a running back at pick 40, okay. 31, oh, don't you dare. But draft good players. That's what we like. Those are words to live by.
Yeah. So do you want to tell everybody about your YouTube channel with 55,000 subscribers and tell them how they can find your content when you're not on Draft Professor?
Yeah, so my main gig is not my main gig. I do have what I like to call a real job that butters my bread. But when I'm not doing that, I write and podcast over at Arrowhead Addict. It's all Chiefs all the time over there. I'm our lead draft guy. You can find us at Arrowhead Addict on Twitter or on YouTube. And then helping out here with draft stuff. Love to be with like-minded people. You can find me on Twitter at PriceAidCarter. Just counting down the days to the draft. So it's great. And then you can hear me occasionally on Sports Radio 810 or 96.5 The Fan here in Kansas City.
Cool. Well, Price, it's always a pleasure to have you on the channel. So good to see Sam Teets in the chat. We'd like to be around like-minded people. Price, Sam, and there's about 70 draft professors around that like to either hang out in the chat or actually on camera. We have daily draft content. So we'll come at you tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Eastern. I believe it's Brian Maffey's 2026 big board is what's coming at you.
I'm not there yet, but I'll have to tune in.
And, summer scouting is officially underway, and we haven't even hit the draft yet. So it's pretty cool to be a draft professor right now. I'm just saying.
Absolutely. It's a good
There's
time.
a lot going on. So for all the podcasters at Draft Professor, for Price, for myself, for Sam Teets in the chat, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you on a podcast again tomorrow, everybody.